Hey, Ashley.
Hey, how are you,
Oh,
Jessica?
I'm good. I need to adjust my camera here. There we go. Ah.
No, mine is pretty close to see. How are
I was
you?
like in the center before, and then when it does the split screen, it's different. I'm still
You gotta
getting
love it.
used to this whole Instagram live thing, but it's super fun. I'm so glad that you're able to join me today.
Yes, me too. I'm also just getting used to Instagram Live. I've done maybe two of them and I've done more webinars and things, but the technology on Instagram Live is very different. So I
Yeah, it's a
understand.
bit different.
We'll be in this together.
Yes. It's pretty casual. We like to keep it chatty and conversational. So, but I'm super excited for you to share some of your knowledge and advice for couples managing money in their relationships and all that sort of important stuff. So, let's just go ahead and get started, and I'll let you kick it off. Tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. So my name is Ashleigh John. I am a financial representative with Northwestern Mutual. I am in the city of Philadelphia and I've been born and raised here. This is where I work. I am currently at home like everyone else, but I love what I do. I'm able to really just meet people where they are, helping them with their finances, taking a look at, hey, what are some goals that you have, some things that you want to accomplish, and then where do you want to be in the future? And taking all of those goals, putting them in a plan and saying, hey, this is what you're going to focus on. This is what you're going to do in the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, and this is what retirement's going to look like for you. So I get the opportunity to be able to meet a lot of really cool people, but be able to be a part of a really important story. I love being able to help people, and in this way I can just help through finances. And it's just one of those things that most people keep most people up at night. So it's either like their health, their family, or their finances. I could never be a doctor because
Same,
blood.
me either. I have so much respect and love for all of the people in the medical industry right now. So,
Me too. 100%, 100%. But this way through finances, I'm able to just help people and give direction for, especially with a lot of people that aren't taught these things as they're younger. So really just being able to create that space where people feel safe and they can just talk about how they feel about money and put some direction towards what their goals are.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. And especially all the talk about goals and priorities and values. That's something that I really try to reiterate in the planning process when you're planning a wedding, because those same kind of rules apply. So I love that, especially when it comes to money. So,
Oh, yeah.
um, so what do you kind of think is like the best starting point for couples to start talking about money with one another if they haven't yet?
Yeah, for sure. The very first starting part is to set aside a time to have the money talk. So I call them money summits to
Money
where
Summit.
So it's a time where you schedule, whether it's an hour on a Friday or an hour on a Sunday morning after breakfast, and you really just want to start to get into the nitty gritty of how each person feels about money. So I know we've heard a lot about love languages and what is your love language, but this is grasping on the idea of what is your money language.
I
So
love that.
starting to ask some questions to each other about what's your earliest memory surrounding money, or how did your family treat money? Do you consider yourself to be a spender or a saver? What stresses you out about money? What makes you happy about money? And how do you keep track of your money now? What's your credit look like? What's your debt look like? So really starting to get down into the numbers, because a lot of people believe that marriage is in because of lack of money. But the truth is it ends because of the lack of attention to money. So when you start to come into the marriage, or you're already in a marriage and you're like, hey, we need to sit down and talk about the things, talk about what our budget is and what our finances are. Start with what your feelings are towards money, and then you'll really be able to get a better understanding of how your partner views money, and then how you view money and how you guys are able to work together. So those are some questions where you can ask each other and see, hey, what would work best for us when we start to either combine our finances or figure out what works best for us in the future.
Yeah. So do you find that like most couples tend to have different or opposite money languages most of the time?
Most of the time. One person's usually a saver and one person's usually a spender. But that's good. It helps them to have that balance in their relationship when it comes to money. However, there are some times where both people are spenders, and we just have to have a different conversation about, hey, how can we make sure that you guys are starting to create the savings behavior and build up that savings muscle so that you can achieve the goals that you guys have for the future. But most times they're complete opposites.
Right. It's like if you're both on one end of the scale, it can kind of tip one way. So finding ways to like rein it in. And I'm sure you have so many great bits of advice for that. Like, what would you tell a couple who tends to be on the same side? Like if they're both spenders, like what is your best advice for that?
Sticking to those goals. Really, it's all about emotion. So if you have some type of emotion attached to what it is that you want to accomplish, for a lot of couples, when I'm meeting them, it's like, hey, we want to build our emergency fund. We want to save for a house. Okay, let's go through your budget. Let's take a look. What are you spending money on? Is it Starbucks every day? Do you know how much that's costing you every month when you add it up? Let's talk about if you are food shopping, but you're also buying food out for lunch every day. Does it make more sense to prep your meals when you're going because you've already bought the groceries for it? So really trying to see, hey, if you cut out some of the things that are not as important to go towards the goal, that will help you start to build that savings muscle. And even in times like today, we know that 70% of people are still living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people have lost their jobs because of COVID-19. But if something like this happens again, where is your emergency fund? How can you make sure that you can still sustain and maintain your lifestyle and at least pay your mortgage or your rent if you need to during a time like this or anything similar? That will be another motivation for some people. It's having that emotion to something that they want, or having that fear like, hey, if something like this happens and I'm not prepared for it, what would I do?
Right. And that's so important right now, especially I think so many people can relate if you've lost your job or your partner has lost their job right now, and you're in the midst of planning a wedding on top of it. Like that's a lot of things to kind of juggle at the same time. So if couples kind of find themselves in a position like that right now, where maybe they've lost one income or potentially both, like what are your tips for just kind of like reevaluating and making a plan of action for like a situation like that?
Yeah, definitely. First steps you want to do is really take a look at what your budget is. If you have options through your mortgage company or with your rental company, if you're still renting, to not pay right now, call them. Take a look at what those options are that you have. Maybe that's something that you just don't have to pay right now. A lot of Fed student loans are put off until September. Make sure that your auto pays are taken off, or whatever you need to do to make sure that, hey, these are expenses. These are the needs right now. And these are the not so needs, like all of the subscriptions that we pay for that are kind of out of sight, out of mind. Hulu may come out every month, as well as Apple Music
Netflix.
and Tidal and Netflix and Spotify. And like, do you need all of those things right now? So really evaluating your budget together, sitting down and saying, hey, what are we spending money on that we don't need to spend money on right now? That's definitely the first step. Next step is evaluating your emergency fund. If there is no emergency fund, the CARES Act that was passed is allowing, if you need money, to take it out from any type of retirement account like your 401k or IRA without the penalty if you need it. Not a suggestion to say steal from your future self. Basically, you're saving for your future self in retirement. But
Right.
if you have to, know that it's something that you can access if you have money set aside in a 401k without the normal penalties that come through.
Yeah, that's really good advice and super good to know because I didn't even realize that you could do that. So I hope that other people found that informative as well.
Yes.
I'm sure they did. So I know a lot of people have asked questions. Like I put out a question box earlier yesterday, and we've got a few questions. And one of them was about how to decide whether to combine your finances or keep them separate. Like, how do you recommend couples proceed with that, especially if they're just engaged, they're not married yet? And does your advice kind of change depending on if they are not yet married or, after the wedding kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So the traditional assumption is that all newlyweds would combine their money or into one joint checking account once they got hitched. But today it's very different. We're all using more creative ways where we can share money or financial responsibilities. It's not a one size fits all approach, honestly. So there's so many different options that you can select. So really it's just talking about what you think works best for you. First option, of course, the traditional option is to just have a joint account, put both 100% paychecks into that joint account, and then just pay your bills from it. You need money, you take money from that. Having worked in the retail banking world for a long time before coming to Northwestern Mutual, I will say that most accounts are set up as OR accounts, which really just means each person has 100% access and ownership to the money in any type of joint account. So if husband walks in one day and decides to withdraw every single penny, he has the right to do so, no matter if wife's paycheck or husband and husband's paycheck, no matter who's going in that account. Each person titled on that account has access to 100% of the funds. So they at any time can withdraw. Unfortunately, I have seen it happen to where in cases of divorce or separation, where the wife may beat the husband to the bank, 2 seconds before he comes, she withdraws all the money, leaves a penny, and he comes in like, I want to withdraw. So that's just something that you would have to see. Do I want to have only one joint account where all of our money is set in one place? And something that each spouse would have to decide and say, hey, this is something that we do want. The other option that I see most couples do is to have joint account and separate account. So maybe you want to share and set aside some funds for yourself. You can keep one joint account to cover like the shared household bills, the things that you know that you guys are going to be paying together anyway, and a separate solo account for the personal splurges like me at the mall, or to have certain bills that you'd rather just tackle on your own. Depending, it really is up to you of how much of each paycheck that you would want to put into the joint account. You may opt to come up with some type of agreed dollar amount that each paycheck, hey, I'm going to put in, 1,000 of my paycheck and you'll put in 1,000 into your paycheck into the joint, and then everything else will go into separate accounts. Or you may decide based on who makes more, who has a higher salary to put in more. It's really what you would decide. And then some couples just say, hey, I want to leave everything completely separate. We'll be independent. If there's anything joint that we need to do, then we'll tackle it when it comes along. But you could say, hey, I'm going to pay the cable bill and you'll pay the heat bill. And then you guys can split who's going to pay what. This is a really good time to talk about that as well. There are some couples that say, hey, I'm going to pay all of the household expenses and you just pay the mortgage, or I'll pay everything and you make sure the gas and the groceries are taken care of. So this is the time where you want to decide, will I be paying for household expenses and the clothes for the kids if we have children, or what would be my responsibility? And this is where you guys can set your roles and what you want to pay for.
Very cool. And yeah, I think a lot of it really comes down to your personal financial situation and what the two of you kind of decide together. But I think the number one thing is to really just communicate about it, as much as possible. So when you talk about your money summit, is that something that you suggest doing one time and never again? Or is this like a regular weekly, monthly? Like what sort of frequency does that happen?
I would recommend doing this at least once a month. At least once a month. So where you can have conversations about, in the beginning, of course, it would be more around feelings. What are we doing? How does this feel? What are my responsibilities? Are we going to do this with a joint, et cetera, et cetera? But with the money summit, at least once a month, you can kind of check in on where we're feeling. So if we set up joint accounts and we like how they're working, maybe we set up a joint savings for our house, or maybe we set up a joint savings for our travel fund. A lot of people like to do joint accounts for certain things, the holiday season, or for like a birthday account, like anybody that we're getting birthday gifts for, it'll come from there. A lot of people are very organized in that way, which I think is fantastic, but it gives you the time to have a check-in and just say, hey, like we said that we were going to save $1,000 each month. What's going on? How are we tracking towards that? Or we're trying to save for a certain thing like a new car or a new home, and we want to make sure that we're on track for this. So it is important to make sure that you're still keeping those lines of communication open, especially when it comes to money. You don't want to set up something good and then assume that it's working for both parties, because if it's not, and that person's not comfortable coming out the blue to say, oh, we're having this issue, you have the time set aside, at least, like I said, once a month, to say, hey, here are some things that I was thinking about our finances.
Yeah, I think that's so great. And then you can kind of like reassess your goals and make sure you're reaching them or moving towards them at least. So I really love that. I think once a month is like a great frequency. And then you don't get like the total burnout from it either.
Right. Exactly.
And nobody wants to feel like they're being like micromanaged either, or overborn. I don't know what the right way to say that is. You know what I mean? Controlled.
Yeah.
I guess would be the better way to say it.
You definitely want input from both sides, and you want to make sure that it's an equal opportunity time for each person to express how they're feeling. So 100%, I hate being micromanaged, whether it's at work or whether it's personal or in life. So this is a great opportunity to say, hey, we're bringing both of our ideas here. I'll give you your space to talk about how you feel, and you'll give me my open space to talk about how I feel. We'll both respect each other's opinions and feelings, but then we'll decide how we're going to come together and make the right decision for us as a couple.
I love that. But like, what if, let's just do a hypothetical. Yes. So like, what if, the wife wants something that's kind of like just for her, like kind of a splurge. Maybe it's like a
Mm-hmm.
new handbag or a new car, or whatever it might be. Like, and it really only benefits one side of the equation, right? One side of the relationship. How can, the person who wants that thing, like broach that with their partner, when it is kind of like just for them?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, any marriage is going to be successful if both parties are happy on their own and then happy together. So I think it's important when you're going into this long lasting contract, really, to make sure that you're going in with the understanding that anything that I want or anything that he or she needs to be happy, I want to make sure that I'm able to support that person, and vice versa. So if, for instance, I know me, if I need something or want something, I'll go directly to my boyfriend and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking that we need to do. And we've set up a way where it's like, okay, well, I'll help you get that. If, you want me to help you with half, then I'll do so. And we can go half on it, because he knows when it's his turn and he sees a new pair of sneakers or something that he wants, he's going to be like, hey, babe, I saw this. Like, do you want to help me get this together? So that's something that's worked for us personally. And I know a lot of people you have to go into it with an open mind to know, hey, this may be something for me right now, but I know that my happiness eventually bleeds into the happiness of my marriage. So it's still knowing that you still kind of have your own life. You have your own happiness that you control. And as long as it's in the budget, I think it's great. You still have to treat yourself. I'm not the type of advisor that's ever going to tell someone, stick to your budget, only get the essentials, maybe right now because of what's going on. But generally, you have to have that time where you're spending money on, hey, going out with friends, going out with family, going to the movies, date night, spending some time on yourself, whether it's at the hair salon or the spa, or even on your favorite new purse that you've been eyeing. So I think that's very important to still put into the budget. And even if that means having like a separate splurge account, create that.
Yeah, I love that idea. I personally am a big fan of having like multiple kind of sub savings accounts that
Oh,
I
yeah.
like stash money in for different goals that I have. So I think like I have one for travel, I have one for gifts, so that I'm never like
Mm-hmm.
scrambling when it comes to Christmas time to be able to like
Mm-hmm.
come up with that money. And that's kind of the system that I've used for years. So I love that, and just kind of like keeping track of where you're at and saving up for those things.
Oh, yeah.
But
That's
I
definitely
agree. It's
very
so
helpful.
important to like enjoy life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what money allows us to do. So I think it's super important. Um, so one of the other questions I had for you was about like kind of the other legal aspects of
Mm-hmm.
money in your relationship, whether it's like taxes and like life insurance and like all of those sorts of legal things that I think a lot of people tend to overlook. Like, how do you suggest fitting that into your money conversation with your partner, and what are kind of the steps that they need to be thinking about?
Right. Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that you want to do is really sit down and schedule some time with a professional. A lot of people have questions about things that they're not sure what the first step is to do. But when you take the pressure off of yourself to just say, hey, we can sit down with someone that does this for a living, just have that free consultation conversation and just say, hey, what are some things that we're missing? What are some things that we should focus on when it comes to taxes or insurance? What do I actually need? What are some things that need to be covered? And then that person can actually tell you, based off of your goals and what's important to you, what you can implement. It's again not cookie cutter when it comes to finances for everything. So when you have that opportunity to find an advisor that you work well with, somebody that you trust, you can say, hey, here's the things that are on my mind. Tell me what it is that I'm supposed to do. And when they're asking the right questions, you know that they're asking the right questions, because it's gonna motivate you to start thinking, hey, I never thought of that. That's a good question. That's something that I really need to sit down and see what happens. When it comes to life insurance, you ask yourself, hey, what would happen if your spouse were to pass away? You guys are now on a 2-income household. Can you afford that mortgage on your own? Can you afford the debts that you have inherited on your own? How about if they are no longer working and you, again, are on a 2-household income? Can you do everything on your own? Do they have some type of disability insurance that's in place? When it comes to taxes, does it make sense to file jointly or to file separately? And you should definitely consider sitting with a CPA, especially your first year when you are filing married. You want to make sure you have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed. And the first thing that to make sure that happens is to really sit with a professional. No one has all of the answers, and taking that pressure off of you, making your goals clear, and having the professional sit in front of you and telling you, hey, here are some things that you can do, especially when it costs you nothing to sit down and have that conversation. It really clears a lot of anxiety and helps you to just go into it, if anything, at least with a clearer mind, at least with knowing, hey, these are the things that I need to focus on. If you don't implement anything the first time you sit down, that's okay. At least you know, like, hey, these are the things that I need to be focusing on in 2 years, 3 years, 20 years and beyond. And then eventually you guys will really be on the same page to say, hey, we're ready to either make a decision or a change, but at least you know where the starting point is when you have the opportunity to sit and talk with someone.
Yeah, for sure. I think for like a lot of couples who are, you know, currently engaged and maybe haven't even lived together yet, they're already trying to like put together a wedding budget, but they need to be thinking beyond like just the wedding day, obviously, into their marriage and for their future goals. So I think everything that you said is like so on point and so important for everybody to keep in mind. And some of it obviously is not the most fun stuff to talk about. Things like life insurance is like a little bit morbid, but like really, really important in terms of like protecting yourself and being prepared for anything that could potentially happen. Sorry, my house phone is ringing right now. I'm one of those weird people who still has a house phone in 2020. Can you believe it?
It's okay. No judgment. I promise.
But, okay. So, I had some other questions and now my answering machine is picking up. Okay. We had some questions come in through the question box.
Okay.
These people, sorry. I wish I could turn it off. It's like on the other side of the room. It's like a company who's like trying to call and buy people's houses right now. I don't know. They like, we'll buy your house for cash, whatever. This is real. This is raw. This is unfiltered, everybody.
Oh yeah.
So, okay. So one of the questions we had was, okay, so this one was about combining accounts, but here's a good one that I thought could be good. The best ways to save for awesome vacations or other things that both people will enjoy in their future.
Yeah, we actually have, I wish I could grab it, but it's on the other side. It's in a different room. We have this really cool frame, like glass shadow box. And they sell them at Target, Walmart, Amazon. And it has vacation fun on it. And in the background, there's a picture of just the beach. So we just drop money into that just because it's fun to look at it grow. So that's one thing that we do. I know a lot of other couples that I've connected with have downloaded different apps like Mint or You Need a Budget, where you can actually set up what certain goals you're saving towards to say, hey, this savings account is for this specifically, and you can set the goal, and it'll show you every single, like each time it updates, hey, how much closer you're getting towards that goal of that vacation. A lot of other people that I've connected with have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not a cash person. So be honest, everything I use probably on my credit or my debit card.
I'm all about the points. So that's me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for some people that use cash, they have started to do a challenge together where every time they get a $5 bill, they'll just save it. And that's going to go towards their next hiking trip or their next tropical vacation. And that adds up very, very, very fast for some people. So if you're a cash person, that would be something that would be really fun to kind of say, hey, who's going to get more fives? And then this is going to go right towards our next vacation.
So you gamify it a little bit and like make it a little friendly competition between the two of you. That's fun. I love that.
Yeah.
If anybody watching is like looking forward to and saving for their next vacation or honeymoon, like raise your hand in the comments. I know I am. I'm already thinking like, where am I going to go when all this is over? I can't wait to leave my house.
We already have our hearts set on Bali, and
I love Bali.
Hopefully we can go in September when it's my birthday. So we've already had this planned back in January. So hopefully we can still make that happen.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Who knows? It's so hard to know. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty around everything right now. But Bali is definitely a good choice. I've spent some time there, so definitely recommend. Definitely recommend. Okay, so let's look at other questions. Okay, this person asks, what bank do you recommend for a joint checking account?
Yeah, great question. So honestly, like I mentioned before, I've worked at a few different financial institutions. There isn't one bank specifically that I would recommend because there are so many different banks across the country. So depending on what it is that you're looking for, if you're more of a small bank, community type bank person, check out your local credit unions or community banks and see what offers they have for new clients that are coming in. If you'd rather have some place where it's like, oh, I travel a lot, I'd rather have an international bank, take a look at Wells Fargo, like the bigger name banks where you know there may be a branch in a different country if you needed it. And then really just seeing, hey, am I a person that goes to the bank? Because I'm not. I do everything virtually. So if, I'm on the app or I'm on the computer, which usually I'm not, but I'm usually on the app and I can download, take a picture of any checks and things like that. So if it's not important to say, oh, there needs to be a branch near my office and there needs to be a branch near my job, if it's important and you're still going into the branches, then make sure that you select a bank that is in that area, close to home and also close to work and anywhere else that you may go. So it does depend on preference. There isn't just one place, but hopefully those help.
Yeah, definitely. And you want to go somewhere where there's local ATMs if you need to take cash out and you don't have to pay the ATM for an ATM fee or whatever.
Yes.
This will get you. Those unnecessary little expenses, they add up.
They add up quickly.
Totally. That's a great question. By the way, anybody who's watching, if you want to drop questions in the comment box, or the question box should still be live on my story, but I'm going to put another one up here. Oh, someone's telling me I want an iPhone 11. I don't think so. Okay, here's a good one. What do you suggest for our 401k rollovers from past jobs? Is it possible or recommended to combine them?
So for any old 401ks, you always want to either roll them over into your new 401k or, again, sit with an advisor that can go through a detailed plan that says, hey, if these are your goals, maybe it makes more sense to put it in a different type of product. But because, again, financials isn't cookie cutter, I can't really say, hey, it is recommended to do it or it's not. Depending on what your income bracket is, it could mean your taxes are very different if you decide to start to combine. So that's where the advisor would come in to tell you, hey, I think this is a good idea, or please don't do that. It's going to cost you so much more money if you do. So it would depend exactly on where you stand, again, income wise, and what your goals are to decide if that's the best option for you. So anytime it would be important to sit and try to find somebody that you think, hey, this is somebody that I trust and would give me the advice that I need. And there are so many advisors where, especially here with Northwestern Mutual, we offer just sitting down and having that conversation without charging. And I know a lot of places, other financial institutions that you may hear of, may cost to just sit down and have the conversation. Again, if you can have it without a cost, find that person or that advisor that's close to you, or any advisor, because we're all working virtually now anyway, that you can just sit and kind of ask those questions to.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So in what circumstances would it potentially cost them money to do that sort of like rollover or combination?
Yeah, so not that it would cost money, but just the tax bracket would be higher depending on what their income is. So there are different income brackets, especially when you're married. So there are different income brackets when you're single. They increase slightly when you're married, but when you're combining people of two high earning incomes, that's where it starts to just cost way more money. If they're making more money and if they have more assets in that 401k, they could have more options than just rolling over into one thing versus someone that doesn't, maybe has a smaller 401k and they only have a select number of options when it comes to what they could do or what type of products they could put it into. There's so many different avenues that I don't want to get too far into the weeds. That's why I think it's important to sit with someone and see like, hey, if my goal is to just preserve this money, then maybe I should go into some type of self-funded pension, like an annuity. If my goal is to grow this money, maybe I should go into some type of advisory account where it's connected to the market and growing on stocks and bonds and commodities and things like that. So it would definitely depend on what the goals are and then exactly where they stand in the income brackets.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good to know. And I'm sure like if anybody has further questions, they can obviously reach out to you to get more in depth and personalized recommendations. But personal finance is honestly a lot just like planning a wedding. So much of it depends on your personal financial situation, your priorities, your goals, and it should be personalized to you. I like to say that weddings are like snowflakes, and I'm sure like you're
I love that.
you know, because they're all unique. But I think personal finance should be the same, because it really shouldn't depend on some one size fits all advice, because it can never apply to everybody. It should be personalized, like you said. So,
Yes.
that's
So even
really,
if you take an hour out of your day and you sit and talk to someone and you get your questions answered, whether you implement any of their recommendations or not, again, coming with the goals and making sure that you both have a clear understanding of what you want to achieve will clear a lot of anxiety going into the marriage. Again, most marriages don't end because of the lack of money, just the lack of attention to money. So just sitting down and having those questions answered provides a lot of clarity. I can't tell you how many couples I've sat with that have been married for 10, 15, 20 years that turn around and look at each other like, oh, wait, you feel this way? I didn't know that you felt this way. I didn't know that this was important to you. So it's never too early to start, but you don't want to put it off till after the wedding by saying, oh, I want to focus on the wedding, because typically after the wedding comes children, or comes the business that you want to start, or your house that you want to get. And then it's just continuing to be put off. So the sooner that you can, especially now that we're all home and we have a little bit more time, sit and talk to someone.
absolutely. And I think, again, like you mentioned earlier, like coming back and doing those kind of monthly check-ins and making it a regular thing, because let's be honest, like, we're all humans. We're allowed to change our minds and to, decide that you value something a little bit differently than you did, last week or last month or last year. People change, it happens. And so making that commitment to regularly check in on a monthly basis, I think, is so important. And I just love that about kind of the advice that you shared. Okay, let's check in on the questions again. Oh, uh-oh. The spam bots on Instagram are something else, aren't they?
They really are. I won probably 10 iPhone 11s today because of that spam bot.
Right. So this is an interesting one for you. So how to downsize a wedding budget because of COVID. So whether, I'm not sure if this person perhaps maybe lost job or their partner lost their job, but if they are in some sort of like financial pickle or strain right now and they're looking at planning a wedding, what kind of would be your recommendation for that?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of interesting things going on right now when it comes to weddings. And I think it's just still an amazing time. Yes, it's wedding season, but with everything going on, who would have ever predicted this? So some of the things that I've been seeing that I think are really cool are some people are still holding either backyard weddings or in-home weddings where they have less than 10 people. Everyone's still distanced from each other, but they're still having some type of ceremony because they're just ready. When you plan for at least a year and a half, a couple of months, now's your time, then you're still going to take that. So maybe that means saying, hey, I'm just going to invite mom, dad, siblings, and we're going to have an officiator, and we're still going to do this thing in home, which is okay. And then after they're having on their first year anniversary, they're deciding, hey, this is when we're going to have our big reception. Saves you a lot of money. Some things that you don't have to pay for, like either renting a venue for the ceremony or a church and things like that, less bridesmaids dresses and et cetera, et cetera. But for some other people, they're saying, hey, maybe we're just going to elope and we're just going to get our licenses and then we'll figure this out once this ends. But taking a look at what your current budget is anyway, what are some things that you can cut back on? Maybe you decided to have a wedding with 100 people, but at this point you're like, hey, I can't afford that, but still want to have my wedding. Maybe take a look at what 75 to 50 people would actually cost you. Do you have to have that type of flower? Could you have this type of flower? Maybe it's a little cheaper. So really being a little bit more nitpicky with saying, hey, what are the things that I need? What are my needs? I am not giving this up. This is what I want to pay for my wedding versus like, this is a want. Don't really need it. Maybe I could cut it out, or maybe I could find a less expensive version.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's like right along with our budget savvy advice. Yes. A plus. I have definitely seen a lot of couples downsizing, obviously, to that immediate family group, doing an at-home wedding, doing a Zoom wedding, and broadcasting it to their guests who can't physically be there with them. And, the elopements, people are getting really creative with those as well. And I think those are all really, really great options. And obviously, like for me, I really like to look at, I don't like it that a lot of couples think like, oh, I only have this amount of money. I have a small wedding budget. Because one of the things that I really try to do at the Budget Savvy Bride is empower people with that money. Like take that money, whatever it is you have to spend, and make the most of it. Make it work for you and spend it the way that you prioritize, based on what's important to you, and, you know, have the day that makes you feel good and that, you know, you and your partner actually want to share together. So for me, it's a lot more about like just empowering people to make the most of what they have and not looking at it like I only have this much, or, you know, you might have to reduce your budget based on whatever might be happening in your life personally right now, but there's so many ways to plan a beautiful wedding and to plan a meaningful wedding without spending a fortune. So don't worry. We've got lots of ideas on our website, so check it out. But all right, I'm going to check the question box one more time.
Okay.
I had another question here about, this says, if your spouse is gambling and trying to solve financial problems, do you have any recommendations for couples kind of with that sort of conflict about money? That's a pretty serious one. But these things happen in relationships. You never know.
This is definitely true. I know I used to have a couple that had kind of a similar problem where the wife was trying to do things for their future as far as buying a home and saving for their child's education. And the husband was just always at the casino. So it took some time to really get him to see how he was affecting what was done in the future. For this couple, what worked for them was sitting and writing down, like, this is all of the money that you've put in towards the casino over the last X amount of days, weeks, months, however long it's been, and seeing this is what we could have done instead. This is what our savings account balance could have been. This is what could have been in our 529 for our son, and just kind of seeing the difference and what his effect was on the family as a whole took him to say, hey, you know what? This is exactly what I should not be doing. Let's just put this money towards something else. Of course, talking to a therapist or somebody in Gamblers Anonymous to say, hey, maybe this is something that's more of an addiction and need to talk to someone, that could help. But the one thing that I know has helped is really seeing this is the effect that I have on my. Sorry, someone just tried to call me. I snapped out there. But I know with the quarantine, I see someone saying here that it's really opened people's eyes into saving, and the result of what they've been spending money on every single month. As I mentioned, a lot of people just go to Starbucks and just swipe every day, and that $5 adds up, as well as buying lunch every single day, going to the mall when we don't need to. So some of those things, people have just been able to see, hey, wait a minute. I'm spending too much money. This is what could go to our debts. This is what could go towards our future. So hopefully sitting down and having that conversation and just being open to saying, hey, I'm not coming at you in a way to where I'm trying to be mean or disrespect you, but take a look at what you're doing and how it's affecting us as a whole, because we are one unit. And these are the goals that we clearly stated that we had in the future for our future.
I think that's such great advice, honestly. And I think really putting it in sort of like a visual format for them, like, is key to really showing the effects of those decisions. But it's such a tricky situation. But I think your advice was like spot on. And I agree with Celise. Is it Celise? I hope I said that right. But yeah, I think this quarantine is putting money and spending into perspective for so many people right now. I think, I know I'm in a lot of Facebook groups personally, and I've seen a lot of people saying like, I've been online shopping more than normal. Like it's almost like a coping mechanism. So depending on where you're at, like with your personal situation, you might want to rein that in. If you're like an emotional spender, you're like, I'm treating myself to things because I can't go out and like treat myself to coffee or to brunch with my girlfriends or whatever it might be. But you're instead spending it on, you know, like Amazon purchases like every day. So
yeah, it's definitely an interesting time because I can't tell you how many carts I have full of stuff versus how many things I've actually gotten. I haven't spent money on anything. And it's because, again, we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know what's going to happen. I'm fortunate enough now to still be able to be a resource to my clients and still have an income. But again, nobody knows what the future holds right now.
Right.
So I guess for me, it's just erring on the side of caution. And yes, it's nice to look at nice shoes and new dresses. But right now it's just taking a look at, again, what's in my budget, what's a need, what's a want right now, and do I have everything that I need? Do I have enough, at least 6 months of my expenses in an emergency fund? And if not, the next time you go push add to cart and submit payment, go to your bank account instead and say transfer to savings account, and just start to save more money, because that's just where I feel is the best thing for us all to be doing right now. Just breaking that cycle of everyone living paycheck to paycheck and starting to save as much money as we can.
I agree. I mean, the fact that the supposed, I say supposed, national wedding budget average is over $30,000, when like I don't actually know if like the median income for the entire nation is above 30 grand. I honestly don't know. I'd have to look it up, but it's questionable to me, you know? So when it comes to weddings, I'm always like, let's think about this a little bit more. But yeah, your personal finances obviously are going to affect you long past your wedding day, and getting on the same page financially, setting those mutual goals together for your future, so important. This has been so great. If anybody has any last questions, feel free to drop them in, but otherwise I think we'll get wrapped up soon. Do you want to share a little bit more about how couples can get in touch with you or potentially work with you if they want to talk to you more?
Yeah, definitely. So my website is www.ashleighjohn.nm.com. So that's N as in Nancy, M as in Mary. My first name is spelled a little different, as you can probably see at the top there. It's Ashleigh. Feel free to go in there. You can check out, of course, my credentials, my history, my biography, as well as connect with me and schedule some time for us to just sit and talk. And it doesn't cost anything for us to have a conversation, but it's just connecting, see if there's any way that I can help you, and then going forward from there. My email address is also in the link to my page as well. So if you were to go to _Ashleigh_Ray, right on my page, there's an email, and it will go right to my email, ashleigh.john@nm.com. So it's all the same, first name, last name @nm.com. And feel free to reach out with any questions that you have, whether it's through DM or email, and we can connect and see what works best for us to chat and schedule a time to see what your goals are and see how I can be a resource to you and to your family.
That's awesome. Ashleigh, I so appreciate you joining me today. This has been informational for me. I hope it's been impactful for you. I saw some comments saying thank you. It's been very meaningful, and lots of agreement. So this has been awesome. And I'm going to share this after I have a chance to edit it, and I'll put it on YouTube, and I'll share all your information and the links to where people can find you there as well. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I think you're a very like calming presence, and you're very like practical and like down to earth, and like also a bit of a straight shooter. And so I think like that's what couples need. They need a neutral third party to help them navigate these conversations and decisions. So I think it's awesome. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Jessica, for having me, and for everyone that joined in on our talk today. Of course, again, there are no dumb questions. There are no crazy questions. You can feel free to reach out with any additional questions that you guys may have. Jessica, thanks again. I really appreciated our time today.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, and stay safe and healthy, everybody, and sane, and don't do too much crazy Amazon shopping during this time.
Yes. Everyone stay safe. Take care.
All right. Thanks, guys.